everyone. Welcome to another episode with the Authentic Communicators. If you don't remember from last episode, I'm Camila. This is Adam, Dylan, and Allie, and we make up the Authentic Communicators. And today we're actually going to be talking about something that is extremely important in all of our opinion, and that is affordability, specifically for us who live in California. And we also are going to expand a little bit about how affordability can affect us as Californians into getting into college. So I'm going to ask Allie to kick it off for us and just kind of give us an overview about what is considered affordable in California because that looks different for everyone.
Yeah, so I think California in itself is a very different entity from other states. For the most part, a lot of people would consider affordable housing wise if you're paying rent $800 or less a month, and that's not really a reality here in California. In California, what state housing policy classifies as affordable is anything that's 30% or less of your income, which ideally makes sense if you're working a full-time job and you're making money and you have a steady income. But for those of us who are currently going to school and working as well, you're working a part-time job, which means you're not getting as many hours, which in turn you're not getting as much money. And so 30% of your income is nowhere near the average rent price.
Wow.
And going right into that, you just defined affordability for us. It's worthy to point out what actually affordability means, like for specifically California. According to the official United States Census Bureau, the average household in California makes about $96,000 yearly. That's like the average. And that beats out second place Maryland by about $4,000. Now, in Solano County, which is relevant for all of us, this is where we currently go to college, it's even higher. It's a smidge under $100,000. So we already see the type of money it takes to live comfortably in California because it's just the average. And we're only talking about housing. So we can kind of see how unattainable it is for any type of student or anyone trying to work a job and support themselves in California. So you're unattainable to see that kind of money, especially younger.
And really building on that, a lot of it really, you think about the monetary things of like having to work a job while you're going to college if you need to do that, or if you're fortunate enough not to. There are other things that do come across as part of the affordability with like food insecurities, like housing insecurities, transport from getting to college, whether your car breaks down and now you're down for a day and it's just such a stress. There's so many stress points that can really affect you when you're trying to get an education. They can be just really hard to even pursue that. And focusing more on homelessness and like home insecurity, for instance. So Eric Digest, a journal from 2023 of the California Community College, the League of California Community Colleges, they surveyed community colleges in California. And through that survey, they found that 58% of students surveyed reported that they had some home instabilities, meaning that they had fear of whether they would have a bed for the night or that their home would remain there while they're going to college. And that is just like such a huge focus that takes up all your time. And it's really hard to look at focusing on education when you don't know if you're going to be able to have a bed for the night.
Yeah.
And this isn't even counting the 28% that they surveyed that reported that they had experienced homelessness over the last 3 months. And this just has such a large impact on these people's lives and just the stresses and the focuses. It's so hard to just focus on getting that A or getting that good GPA in college while having all these different things that can just go wrong or you have to really focus on and take your focus away.
Yeah. That's good stuff. That's good information. When I think about affordability in college, I think about it a little bit differently. So based off of the numbers that Adam gave with $100,000 being like the income for a family, I have that. But when I think of affordability, I think about our actual lives. Like, can a person's life actually allow them to go to college? And what I mean by that is I'm a mom of four. And they're all in elementary school. So when I thought about affording college, my mind kind of went to time versus financial, which I think you kind of touched on it just a little tiny bit. But affordability, and I'm bringing this up because I want everybody to be a part of this conversation because we think money, but affordability is time as well. Can you afford to be present to get that degree. I think that's super important. And it kind of leads me into our second topic, about how affordability can affect the student outcomes. So whether it's financial or whether it's time, what did you have in your? Because I know
Well,
you looked into this part
I
more
did,
than
yeah.
others.
With I focus mainly on things with how homelessness and how the home instabilities really affect people, or like what does that do to the student? What is the outcome of that? And I found that the outcome of that was actually reported by the American College Health Report
Hmm.
by Maria Conboon et al. And she found that GPAs as an average for if you reported home inequalities, or sorry, not inequalities, home instabilities,
Hmm.
you found an average lower GPA across basically everything. It was just like marginally, if you were at like a 3.0, it was now like a 2.7. And this was even more extrapolated with homelessness. So if anybody had experienced homelessness, it was even less than that average. And this is really damning, and it really shows what impact this really has. Because if you have a lower GPA, there's probably a higher chance that it'll lead to a greater likelihood of dropping out or not feeling like you can do this because you can't focus on the classes that you're trying to do, and you have your time's being taken up of like, I got to find a new place to rent, or I need to pay rent at the end of the month.
Right.
And this really leads to some just hard things in people's lives. But simultaneously, anybody that found in was in these surveys who took advantage of aid programs actually did not have the decrease in GPA. So I think that really illuminates what just providing these basic needs programs and what illuminating them to the general public can do. And as a whole is really what I think we should strive to do to a degree, is make things more prevalent and visible to
I
be
think this
obtained.
leads into an important conversation of what does affording things actually mean. What does just affording college actually mean? I know you mentioned it with time. Um, what I'm thinking of, if there's someone that's technically affording college, they can afford to go to school, they can afford housing, they can afford food, water, and if an emergency, they can take care of it. What if the only way they can do that is if they're working upwards of 55, 60 hours a week? Like, what does that actually mean? That's where the
Yeah.
time comes in. For some people that's considered like not affording it because it's arguably like one of the main purposes of going to a community college. One, it's like the most affordable form of secondary education, but also you would want to eventually transfer to a 4 year to get a 4 year degree. The transfer rates out of community college to a 4 year are astronomically low. And that's because in order to afford it, many people have to work a lot of those hours and still can't afford certain things. They can't, because especially with, in the current college climate, a lot of things going digital. Now we need to afford a Chromebook or some sort of desktop. Um, so if you only work those hours, your GPA is going to suffer. You can't get into the school you want to. And now the whole purpose of going to community college is essentially to feed it.
Yeah, I think building off of that, there's, I would argue that affordability probably has three main topics. The most obvious one is the monetary aspect. Everyone thinks of money when they think of affordability, but like you talked about, and you talked about, time is a really big thing. If you are putting all of your time and effort into something else, then what's the point in being able to afford everything? Because it's not gonna work out in the end. And then the last one I think is resources, which I think is a really big one because there are so many resources
Yes.
available, but without proper access to those resources, then they're kind of useless and they don't really add to the affordability aspect.
Right.
But I also think building on what Adam said with the transfer rates, if you're being able to afford community college is nowhere near the same as being able to afford a 4 year, which
Yeah.
also impacts those transfer rates because yes, you're comfortably living and affording a community college and you're able to live and eat and go to school and exceed, but without proper resources, those transfers aren't going to happen at the same price range.
Something I would like to add to that really quick. When we talk about the difference in affording community colleges versus the 4 year, according to calmatters.org, the California State University tuitions are set to increase by about 34% over the next 5 years. Now, mind you, this is supposed to be the affordable 4 year option.
Wow.
So, and it's already around 5, 6 times the price of community college.
Did you have anything to?
No.
Or any places you wanted to expand? Because that was really good information, particularly when you said define. Oh, I just had the word. I had the word.
Affordability.
Hip, the affordability.
Affordability.
Like, just go into it deeper because I think you have a really good idea about it.
Like in what aspect? In the sense that there's like different realms of affordability.
Yeah.
So I think the most basic one is monetary. Obviously, are you living? Are you able to afford your bills, your housing, your schooling, everything that you need, all the basics for survival, and then time. If in having the funds to survive at that rate, do you have the time to also succeed with that? If you're putting all the time into those funds, then those two are eventually going to cancel out because you're not going to have the time for the academics.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one's the resources. Kind of like Dylan said earlier, if your car breaks down, are you going to be able to get there? Do you have a car at all to get to and from? Do you have the money for school, but you don't have the ways to get there? Do you have the money for school, but you don't have access to the books or like um, Adam said, the technology, all that? It all plays in, and each part is important to the overall topic of the book.
Yeah,
Well,
there's so many factors really when you think about it, because you think about money, and it's like tuition is really just like the first thing that everybody's mind goes to. It's like, wow, 30K like a semester,
yeah.
30K a quarter. It's like, oh, how am I affording some of these things? And then you start taking into account of just time in general, your busy lives, whether you have kids, whether you have responsibilities of people you need to take care of, whether like your mom falls sick or something, and you need to go help her, and you need to stay with her for a while. It's like there's so many just obstacles or random things that can just interrupt and really put a damper on your focusing on the education.
Mhm.
And it really just can drain you emotionally and physically.
Yeah, it can. And it is, I think, something that's not really talked about is how much time goes into finding those resources. So when you think about scholarships, you're writing essays for it. You just have to kind of, I guess, go. I want to say it correctly. Y'all bear with me. This is what you get, authentic communicators, okay? But you have to put, so where your heart is, there your treasure is. So kind of moving into our segment 3, where the encouragement and the solutions and things kind of come in. I don't want anybody to move from watching our podcast and think that this is an easy process. We've all sacrificed the level of ourselves to invest in our education with those resources that Ali talked about, right? So any kind of solutions that you found to kind of help students and potential students navigate through this space?
Yeah, I think a big focus that I found, or a big takeaway I found from doing some of the studies and surveys that I read, was that really just illuminating and making sure that aid programs are visible and that people that need them see it. Because as the outcomes I stated earlier, people that got access to these aid programs or knew about them, knew to go find them, how to get to them, had so much better outcomes and so much more like equal outcomes to students that aren't necessarily suffering the same problems that they are. And you looking at the California Community College report that they do at the end of the year by Sonia Christian. It's the 2024-2025 one. And in it, it talks about a program called the Student Housing Affordability Program. And it seeks for community colleges to have housing or some form of housing at select colleges to allow students to have that stability in their life. That way they don't need to look and really worry about rent in the same way. And they can focus on education through programs like this. And these programs see sizable amount of grants, but they're not at every community college yet. It's kind of in somewhat of a mid stage. But it's something that people need to be aware of. Is first of all, it's like I don't know how many people actually know that this program even exists or that they're doing this program and implementing it. And illumination of these is really where I think is a big improvement and a solution to the problem of finding this aid.
I think building off that, I think it's so important for people to understand that there are so many resources that go untouched simply because people don't know about them. There's so many scholarships that Like,
Can you give us an example? Because I know we found some weird
yeah,
ones.
we found some really interesting ones. And actually, right after we had this conversation, my stepmom sent me a link to a Dr. Pepper scholarship.
What?
You literally just write a short essay about how you like Dr. Pepper, how it's impacted you. Like,
Okay.
there's so many things. So it's like people don't know about them, and if they do, they like just go past it. But there's millions of different scholarships and like options, and not just scholarships, like other financial aid or just resources as a whole. But so many people don't put in the time to
Mm-hmm.
actually apply to them that they essentially go untouched, and so anyone that applies will end up getting some sort of part
Yeah,
of that.
something.
Yeah.
100%. I think the untouched aid programs are just one of the biggest parts. I mean, um, all of us, we go to Solano. We know there's a huge aid program here. Heard about it one time at an athlete meeting, and that was about it. It seems hard to find. It seems mean to say that it feels like they're hiding it from us, but it does feel kind of hidden. And I just hope, in the future we can get more things like that out there so people can access. I do think another part of this whole equation is a great piece of advice is that is when you turn 24 years old, you no longer have to report your parents' income, and it's no longer your financial aid package is no longer based off your parents' income. So if you're someone who's struggling financially, you have a significantly higher chance to get a better financial aid package.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't mind, I have a personal story really quick. I'm transferring to a 4 year after this semester, and I do have parents that are fortunate enough and kind enough to agree to pay for just my bachelor's. Now, for me, I want my master's, right? So I'm going to have to either ball out years 3 and 4 and hope to get an academic scholarship, or maybe it's smarter for me after I get my bachelor's, wait a couple of years, and then go back when I'm 24 and get a better financial aid package.
Yeah.
I also think it's so important to understand that, like, no matter what financial situation you're in, you're not alone in that.
Yeah.
There's so many people in similar situations and going through very similar things. And for the most part, uh, I know it's like a cliche to like reach out, ask for help, but professors and other people like on school staff are all usually very understanding
Mm-hmm.
about circumstances. Yes, it sucks to have to open up about things like that. Sometimes it can feel embarrassing, but there's no reason to be ashamed of that when you're doing the best you can for yourself.
Yeah.
Again, it's also cliche, but it's like, there is almost no need to be afraid about that stuff. It's always hard opening up because that is very personal. But in this stage of life, that can't be more relatable. So I think
Yeah, everyone
Especially in
understands.
California.
We've all
Yeah.
been there.
literally,
Yeah.
especially as Solano County students hoping
Mm-hmm.
to transfer to other California
Yeah.
colleges. It could not be more relatable for us. So I think for us, it should be more okay to speak out about it and just go up to a counselor or anyone who you can find that would know this information and just ask where the help is and
Yeah.
take advantage of the help that you can.
Mm-hmm.
Being growing up and understanding that asking for help is actually something you should probably do.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to do something, I imagine that someone that works at your campus or and somewhere will probably have an idea
Right.
of something you could try to do. And it's kind of getting, I don't even know if it's your own pride or embarrassment, whatever it is. It's like just even a quick Google search can find scholarships, as we found the other day
Yeah.
with random weird ones that you can apply for. So it's really about taking the first step and pushing towards it, and just having that in mind to ask for help. And people will most likely help given your circumstance.
Yeah.
Also, like Adam said, it does feel like the financial aid programs, they feel very hidden. But if you outright ask for them, they're very open about it. Like they're not there. There's lack of publicization of them. Like they're not very
Mm-hmm.
seen. You can't. It's hard to find them. But if you ask for them, the counselors will give you everything you need to know about them, and and it's not hidden anymore.
When I was a senior in high school, I didn't do the mandatory office appointment to talk about the financial aid package. They had to call me because they didn't want to do it. But then I got there and I was like, okay, this is helpful information. Actually, I
Yeah.
appreciate this.
I did
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think that we touched on so much, but I think like when I left high school, it was kind of like college was big kid stuff, and you need to come prepared. You shouldn't be asking everyone for help. That's just how I felt. What 10 years ago? Is that what I graduated high school in 2010? It was a long time ago, guys. You're up here with an OG. But I graduate again next month, and I'm really, really excited. And one thing that I thought was interesting is, of course, having the kids was a big thing for me, not going back to school for like 8 years. And I didn't know that they had childcare for my kids as a student. I didn't know that if I worked my butt off and kept a high GPA, I can get access to things like PTK, right? Phi Theta Kappa, that's here on campus, to where I can get access to amazing scholarships and not little scholarships. I mean, like $50,000 scholarships, and they'll pay all the way up to your master's if you, one, ask for help, and two, don't limit yourself because of your preconceived notion of college. Like mine was have it together kind of stuff. So I just, for my little piece of encouragement is, I'm going to sound like my parent here, but if you want better, you got to do better. You get in community college. Right now, I believe it's like free for most people. I don't know.
It's like first semester at
First,
high school.
yeah, first semester.
For our
Work,
first year, I think.
yeah, work your butt off. Like it's not easy, but you know, and it's no sugar coated advice. But if you want better, you definitely have to do better. That's been my experience. Do you have one piece of advice?
For me, it's just I want to preface this whole section by saying when I was researching this and writing this down, I was like, I kind of sound like my dad. Because it just feels like I'm trying to say like, oh, just wanted more. That's not how I want to come off as. I want to come off as a lot of these things. I'm just hoping combined can help make college more affordable and just going to college more obtainable. Um, it's difficult for just like one or two of these things to just completely erase the entire problem or an entire problem that one student is facing. I'm just hoping these can be solutions that just slowly can knock off costs over time. But of course, there's a caveat that higher GPAs do lead to more opportunities. But then there's always the caveat of due to certain situations, it's harder to maintain a GPA. So the only advice I truly can give is ask for as much help as you can. It's not embarrassing, or at least it shouldn't be embarrassing. And then try your best.
I think really just searching for aid programs. So like for me, for instance, I didn't my family I thought made like a certain amount of money where I wasn't really going to get access to a lot of the aid. So like the first years I didn't really apply for it. I was like, well, what's the point? It's like I don't really qualify for any of the markers. At least I thought so. But exploring the topics more has made me realize over time that there is actually a different scholarships, different aid programs that can definitely work for me. And that's something to take away. Even if you think you're not going to really apply for any of these, apply for them anyways and just see what happens. It's not really any harm to
That's
that.
great advice. Yep.
I think my biggest piece of advice isn't necessarily specific to the topic, but it falls into it, I guess. Don't compare yourself and your situation to the situation of those around you because every single person's going through something different. And by comparing yourself to others, it's likely that you're just limiting yourself and holding yourself back or holding yourself to a standard that you, in this point of your life, can't actually reach. So instead, just push yourself to do the best that you can, even if the best that you can isn't the same as what other people do.
Work hard at that. That's just my work ethic. My work ethic is you work hard, you want it, you work hard. That can go into a whole nother topic, but that is just my work ethic. I love yours, love yours, love yours. I'm going to take this as I go to my big girl university. I'm really excited. Are you graduating this?
Not this.
Not this.
Just us two. Well, we out of here this semester. We did it. But thank you all so much for tuning in for the Authentic Communicators. We hope that you picked up something, and we look forward to talking to you again. Nice job,